didn't know the name of Julia Beck until last month. Now, it's etched in my memory. The way a nightmare clings to your mind long after you've woken up. It started one night when my phone rang at 4:11 a.m, dragging me from the kind of deep sleep that leaves you confused and slow. I didn't recognize the number, but in my drowsy state, I answered anyway. There was a pause, long enough to make me wonder if someone had dialed by mistake. Then, a woman's voice, low and trembling, whispered, "Is this David?" My heart sank. A deep, instinctive dread that seemed to freeze my veins. I should have hung up, or told her she had the wrong number. But something about her voice felt off, desperate, in a way that went beyond a simple misdial. "Yes," I said, my voice barely more than a murmur. "Oh," she replied, sounding almost relieved, yet still terrified. "My name's Julia Beck. Please, don't hang up. I need your help." I remember feeling something catch in my throat, as if her fear was contagious. It wasn't like I knew her, or had any reason to listen, but there was a strange sincerity in her words. Against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. "Julia," I replied, trying to sound calm. "I don't know you. How did you get my number?" "It doesn't matter," she replied hastily, her voice quivering. They're watching me. They've been watching for so long. And now, I think they're coming. I don't have much time." The way she spoke, each word unsteady, like a woman on the edge of panic, struck a nerve deep inside. Something in me wanted to believe her, but then again, who calls a stranger at 4 a.m. with such a story? "I'm sorry," I said, as gently as I could, "but I don't know what you want me to do." She was silent for a few seconds, and then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, she whispered, "If you receive a call from me again, David, run and don't look back." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, half convinced I'd just dreamed the whole thing. Who was Julia Beck? Why did she sound like she knew me? And, more chillingly, why had she called me with such a strange warning? The days that followed were quiet, but a kind of eerie quiet that lingered around the edges of my life. Every time my phone rang, a jolt of fear surged through me, and even familiar numbers gave me pause. The image of Julia's last, whispered warning haunted me, repeating over and over in my mind. But no calls came, and I started convincing myself that maybe it was some elaborate prank or a wrong number. But a part of me couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched, like invisible eyes followed me everywhere I went. The feeling clung to me, making me glance over my shoulder whenever I walked down the street. Each shadow seemed sharper, every sound more ominous. Then, 3 days after the call, I found a letter in my mailbox. There was no return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside, I found a single piece of paper with 2 words scrawled on it. "I'm sorry." My blood went cold. I didn't know if it was Julia or someone else, but it was a connection I didn't want. A week passed without incident, and I was beginning to think it was over. I'd even started telling myself that maybe the call, the letter, it was all a mistake. Then, on a cold Friday night, as I was winding down, my phone rang. When I saw the number, my heart lurched. It was the same unknown number that had called me that first night. Julia's number. For a moment, I just stared at it, my hands trembling as the ring droned on. I could feel that familiar knot of dread tightening in my stomach, urging me to ignore it. But despite the fear, a part of me had to know. I answered. "Hello?" There was a strange, distorted noise on the other end, like a bad connection or static interference. And then, just as I was about to hang up, I heard a faint whisper, muffled and strained, but unmistakably Julia's voice. "They know who you are now," she whispered, almost as if she were crying. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to." Her words broke off abruptly, replaced by a loud, piercing shriek that sounded as though it was coming from far away, echoing through the line. I dropped the phone, the sound still ringing in my ears. It felt as if my room had grown darker, like the shadows had crept closer, suffocating me. I couldn't sleep that night, every creak and groan of my house leaving me on edge. I didn't dare turn the lights off, but I knew it wouldn't help. The next day, I decided I needed answers. I tried searching Julia Beck online, sifting through endless articles and social media profiles. Nothing matched. It was as if she didn't exist. But then, buried in the back pages of an old news website, I found a small article from 10 years ago. A woman named Julia Beck had gone missing in a town not far from mine. She'd vanished from her home late one night without any signs of a struggle, leaving nothing behind but her cell phone and a cryptic note that simply read, "Don't look back." The police eventually declared it a cold case. The photo with the article was grainy, but there was something familiar about her face, as if I'd seen her before in a half-forgotten dream. And just like that, a horrible realization sank in. Julia Beck was dead. She'd been dead for a decade. So who was calling me? Or maybe, a darker question, what was calling me? That night, as I was lying in bed, I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping at my bedroom window. My heart pounded as I sat up, my gaze locked on the window across the room. I didn't want to look, didn't want to see what might be outside, but the tapping continued, like someone knocking to be let in. Taking a deep breath, I inched towards the window, each step feeling heavier, as though something wanted me to stop. When I finally reached it, I forced myself to look outside. There was nothing there, just the empty, dark street below, illuminated by the cold glow of a distant streetlight. I felt a small sense of relief until I turned back to the room and noticed my phone. It was lit up, the screen showing an incoming call from Julia Beck. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't ignore it. The phone continued to ring, and I pressed answer almost instinctively, holding it to my ear as my heart raced. "David," Julia's voice whispered, barely audible over what sounded like distant screams. "They're almost here. Please, run. You still have a chance." "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, desperation creeping into my voice. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," she replied, her voice breaking. "They're making me. They need someone else. Someone who can take my place. I'm so sorry, David." And then, as her voice faded, she added one last thing, her tone filled with an unbearable sadness. "They'll come for you too." The line went dead. I threw my phone across the room, the horror of her words settling in. She was passing something on to me, something dark, something that had been haunting her and now was seeking a new victim. Julia Beck was trying to save herself. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer alone, that something unseen was watching me, waiting. When dawn finally broke, I felt a strange compulsion to leave my house, to just start running and never look back. But I didn't. Instead, I locked every door, closed every window, and waited. It's been 2 days since that last call. I haven't left my house. Every time my phone rings, I feel that same dread, and I can't bring myself to answer. I know it's her. I know she's calling, waiting for me to break, to answer, to let whatever she brought with her cross over to me. But the worst part, last night, just as I was drifting into a fitful sleep, I heard something. A faint knock at my door. I didn't move. I didn't answer. And when I looked at my phone this morning, I found a new message. "Thank you for answering. You've saved me." The message was signed Julia Beck.